Hi, welcome back to the Bulwark Studio. Tony here, and this is the second episode of the Herb Master project. Today we have a quick look on how to set up Unreal Engine 5. So, first things first, we want to start a project in Unreal Engine. Mind you, I'm using version 5.5.4, but any version above 5.0 is gonna cut it. Now, what you can see right here is the project browser, where one would choose among a bunch of templates to create a new project. We're going to go with the blank games template with these options: blueprints and not C++, target platform with desktop, maximum as quality preset, and starter content ticked on. Then we will choose a project location and a project name, the one that suits your case. And finally click on the button Create. And this is what we'll first see as soon as Unreal Engine 5 opens up. We're finally inside Unreal Engine 5. To start, we want to make our first folder where all our content is getting organized. So, right here, I'm gonna make the Herb Master content folder. You can name it as you please. In this first folder, what we're gonna do is make a second folder called Maps. And in it, we're gonna make our first level. A level is a collection of actors, any actor, and what we're gonna do with it is create our first gameplay environment. If we open this first level, what we'll see is a black screen, and that's because it doesn't have any landscape and no environmental lighting. To add lighting to a level, what we do is go into Window and open the Mixer. Here we can create a skylight, an atmospheric light, a sky atmosphere, a volumetric cloud, and a height fog. All of these are needed to make a realistic environment. Any of these components have a bunch of settings, sliders, and attributes, but we're gonna skip on to that and see that once we've added all of those, we have a skybox, we have clouds, we have a fog, which right now is quite noticeable. But what we do now is make a landscape, which is basically our terrain. Now, onto the landscape. The first thing we want to do is go into the landscape mode right up here, where we can see this grid is shown and a bunch of settings. But what we want to do is make a new folder called landscape. Right here we will store our first landscape material, which is a kind of material where all the information about the different kind of terrains are stored. To create one, we go right here into this box, click create new asset material, say where we want to save it, which is landscape, and give it a name. Now, before we create the landscape, let's have a quick look at how to set up the landscape material so we can also see how blueprints work. So, what is a material? A material is an asset that can be applied to meshes to define how they look. So we can apply a texture or a color. And materials are defined basically in the same way as blueprints are. Both blueprints and materials have graphs. Graphs are these visual spaces where we can put nodes that have input nodes and output nodes. For example, this one doesn't have one. What we want to do right now is make a landscape material with different layers, and to do that we need a layer blend node. To add a landscape blend node, what we do is right click onto the graph, so this window pops up, and we search landscape layer blend, this one. Right now it doesn't have any input nodes, and to add one we go into layers right here on the left and click plus. So now we have one layer and we can add as many as we want. So for now I made two layers, layer grass and layer dirt. After this, let's have a look at this output node. The output node, as we can see, is compatible with any of these input nodes. That's because it contains all of these informations at once. To make it possible that this goes into all of these at once, we go into landscape material and click on use material attributes right here. Now, before we connect these two, we want to define the layer grass and dirt. And to do this, we use the starter content that we included at the start of the project. Now, to start the definition of a material, we right click and add the make material attributes that has all of the inputs of the landscape material but we can have it before and then connect it right here. To find this material, we use the textures of the starter content, and to get one, we add a new node, which is a texture sample. To get the texture that we need, we go in texture right here and search the one we want. So in this case is grass, and right here we can see that we have T ground grass D and T ground grass N. The D stands for default, and it's the one that goes into the base color, and then we have the N, which is normal, and of course it goes into the normal. So we place this one here, and we get a second one, and in it we put the T ground grass N and put it into the normal. Since we don't have the maps for all of these information, all we want to do is define the infos for these three. This one we want to give it a value, and to get a 1 value we hold the 1 key on the keyboard and click with the left mouse button, and we have this value. We connect it to the roughness and then give it a value that we want. In our case it's gonna be 1. Now another thing we want to do is define the scale of the material that we apply onto the mesh. To do this we use a texture coordinates. This texture coordinate, what we want to do is multiply it with a parameter so that we can define on the go how big this texture has to be. So what we do is we get the multiply node, promote these B to a parameter, call it for example grass scale, and in A we put this texture coordinate, and what we get out of this goes into UV. Of course, grass scale is put right now to 1, and we then decide how much we want it to make it bigger or smaller. Now I'll do the same for the dirt layer. Okay, so now that we got the dirt material all set up for the layer, we can finally connect the landscape layer blend to the landscape material, and it doesn't give us any error. Now that this is all set up and ready to go, we can go back to the layer, to the landscape mode, and click on create. After we click the create button, we can see that the landscape is still pitch black, and that's because the layers that we have defined in the landscape material have no info assigned to them, and we have to create these infos. So we go into the paint menu. It's just saving, don't mind. We go into the paint menu, and right here we click on create layer info, and we create the weight blended layer. That's because with the use of weight we can then paint on the landscape the material that we want in that specific point. An intuitive example for this principle can be the grayscale map right here. Black areas represent grass, while white represents rock with their mixes in between. The same basically happens for our landscape as well. Now we say where do we want these infos in the landscape folder. We do the same for the dirt layer, so also in the landscape, and right now what we can see is we select the dirt and we can paint. It's a bit light, but we can paint this kind of dirt on the ground. So the landscape is all set up and ready to go. Finally, our level is all set and ready to go for what regards the landscape and the skybox. And for today, that's all we're gonna see. I'd advise you to sneak a bit into the documentation of everything that we touched today. I'll leave all the links in the description, and if you have any doubts, just leave a comment below. I'll see you in the next one.